The views and opinions expressed in this video are those of the person speaking and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Assembly members, staff, ACLU, or Let Us Live California. Any content provided by our concerned citizens is their opinion and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. The people were there to express their voices to public officials and ask for their support of AB392, California Act to Save Lives. We hope they do. No money was exchanged in the making of this video. The events unfolded as you see them. No editorial cuts were made. We use discretion only where we feel privacy was needed and to keep the video short. We are thankful to everyone who participated. On Monday, May 13th, concerned citizens from all over the state came together to lobby California Assembly members in an effort to gain support for AB 392. We arrived together in front of the state capitol and came with personal stories to tell and a unity over this public safety bill. The bill was authored by Shirley Weber, Democrat from San Diego.
Our first meeting is at 11 o'clock.
We have James Bell.
Plenty time.
We have time to go take up on some coffee.
Can you read the list again? Who's Smith? Who?
Smith.
Smith and who else?
Rendon, Kylie, and Santiago.
Own, but for all children. Mothers are a central piece of what we do. Oftentimes people say God created mothers because he couldn't be everywhere. And that is so true. Mothers become an integral part, not only of the lives of their children, but for every child in the community. It's that connection that is so essential that helps us all to grow. And so we have a tremendous respect for mothers who are here today. I want to thank you all for coming out because this is an important bill. And it really talks about our love for our children. And no greater love than a mother has for her child. And one can only imagine in the worst sense what it feels like to lose that child.
Come on in. Crowd. Got a couple of seats, but we'll just
seat anyone.
There we go. So, how's everybody doing?
We're doing pretty good. I know you pressed for time as Christy just got here, but my name is Ruth, and we are here with the Just Let Us Live Coalition, the ACLU, and today we're going to go ahead and talk to you, and I know I've been back and forth with Christy on the AB 392, and I'll go ahead and send her a message, but pretty much as she is aware, we've had 2 killings recently in the Antelope Valley in Palmdale, which is our neighboring city, and from police brutality. These are Armando was a 17-year-old that got killed, and because he was trying to put the dog away, the officers were trying to kill the dog, and actually ended up shooting the 17-year-old Armando. They did not let the mother see him until the next day. Through the whole time while the mom was at the hospital, at AB Hospital, trying to see her son, the officers kept saying, the suspect, you cannot see the suspect. Even though he was the victim, they still calling him a suspect. So the mother didn't get to see her son in the last hours. So that is not acceptable. So we do know that there's police brutality, and she may be aware, she's actually aware of the racial profiling lawsuit that went on, and the DOJ found Lancaster and Palmdale responsible and guilty.
So I'm a Vallejo resident, and I've had more bad experiences with Vallejo police than any other place I've lived in the Bay Area. One night I was driving home, and suddenly this big truck comes up from behind, tailgating me, shining their brights in my light, in my mirror. No idea it was a cop. I pulled over to the right lane to let them pass, and they followed me. And I'm like, oh my God, there's some crazy guy following me. I turned right to avoid him. They followed, and I started getting really scared. Like, I'm afraid if I go home, somebody's gonna like mug me, rob me, kill me. I don't know who it was. I start speeding, running stop signs. Finally, they beeped their lights and pulled me over. I was so like amped up. I jumped out of the car. I started yelling at them. Just imagine if that had been a young black man jumping out of the car. They said, "Ma'am, get back in your car. We were trying to read your license plate. Then your evasive maneuvers made us suspicious." I'm driving normal. I'm pulling over to let him pass. That's an evasive maneuver in their eyes. So I complained to the guy who manages the Coffee with the Cops community relations the next day, and he told me, "Oh, we're sorry you were scared, but they're scared every time they pull somebody over. They don't know what's going to happen, and oh, your car must have fit the demographic or the description of somebody, so they're telling me it's okay to treat people like that." And I'm one of the few people, maybe, I think in Vallejo people are afraid to complain. I'm not afraid to complain, but their culture is messed up, and I think this bill will help them be one of the things that they need to get in line and start treating people with respect.
Okay, Terrence.
I'm Terrence. The reason I feel like AB392 is as important as it is because it will help change the mindset that our current California police officers have. There are no other places in the country, I dare say the world, where people are killed by police officers as much as they are here. And I think that's just because of the mindset that our police officers have. And I think that AB392 would be the first steps towards changing the way that they think about a situation when they go into it, not seeing every stop, every traffic stop, or every altercation with another person as a deadly situation, but looking at it more as a way to, just work together with the community. Recently in Vallejo, there was a young man, Willie McCoy, who was shot at a Taco Bell in a plaza. He was in his car unconscious. Taco Bell called just because he wasn't moving, and they had called out to him, but he wasn't responding, but he was unconscious in his car. The police pulled up, and over the span of about 5 minutes, they had basically set up a situation that there were no other options outside of deadly force. And then when the young man woke up, they had realized he had a gun, and police officers had started shooting at him. But he hadn't fully woken up. It was more of a flinch. The video's on YouTube now, actually. And it just showed that our police officers in Vallejo, and I'm sure all over California, have a mindset that whenever they pull up to a situation that they could die, which means they're afraid. So if they go into a situation afraid, like the officers in the video whose hands were shaking while holding their guns, if they go into these situations, then it just means more and more lives will be lost. But if AB 931 comes in, then there can be policy that would change the way that they're trained and the way that they think when they go into urban situations.
Okay, and next we have Brian.
So for 24 years, I defended police officers in Santa Rosa. I retired as city attorney there in 2008, and I personally defended officers in shooting cases in federal court and was on 2 post committees that developed training for all California peace officers on suicide by cop and responding to incidents involving the mentally ill. The law is broken. We all see, not only are there no criminal prosecutions filed, we never hear about discipline in officer-involved shootings because it isn't imposed. Do we really believe that a law that just establishes what the police can do instead of what they should do is adequate? We as the bosses, the police are there to protect and serve us, need to require that they de-escalate whenever possible, and that being a guardian of all of us, even if we're in the middle of a mental health crisis, even if we're under the influence, even if we're very angry because of a fight with a family member, they need to try to de-escalate. That this law would require that, and it also holds the officers accountable where they create the circumstances that led to deadly force. If I, a 66-year-old grandfather, had been passed out at that Taco Bell, and after 5 minutes of sizing up the situation, if they had discovered I had a pistol on my lap, they would have backed off behind cover, behind the corner of the building, and they would have waited me out and tried to engage me using calming de-escalation techniques. Instead, on the video, you see one officer say to another, and the officer has his weapon pressed right up against the window, "You know what to do if he moves." They created the conditions where any flinching would lead to deadly force. We need a better California law on the use of deadly force.
Joanna.
So recently, Willie McCoy's niece was driving down Broadway Street in Vallejo, and officers said she did the gun pointing fingers towards them, so that's what caused them to pull her over. They ended up snatching her out of the car, throwing her on the ground, and then tasing her. When everything was said and done, the officer corrected himself and said they initially pulled her over for driving without a license. So just with that whole situation, I can relate to it because I've been pulled over by the police before, and most of the time I put my hands out the window just because I'm afraid that it could go beyond. But even though they've never done anything to me personally, I just know how they've treated other people in our community in Vallejo.
Okay, and next is TJ.
Hang on, Terrence. Hi, I live in Vallejo for about 20 years, and I've seen all these things happen. It's been fairly traumatizing in the community to be a part of this community and not be able to see any changes. I know the police reform ends up being worse every time they say reform. It doesn't typically work. We don't need it piecemealed anymore. Something like this bill could help the entire state to negotiate peace in our communities again. As a 20-year veteran in the city, I've also seen where families have spoken to them after city council meetings where one family couldn't get a hold of the body for 30 days, and the forensic mapping showed that the gentleman had his hands up like this. There was 31 bullet holes in that young man, and the cop got on top of the car and unloaded, which means he reloaded for 31 shots. That's a lot of hate, a lot of fear. I don't know what it is. I wasn't that guy. I don't know who he is, you know. But for me, as a citizen, when we asked for a police commission, which would have been great, but it's also piecemeal per city, right? When we asked for that, a guy on the line said, "Do you have a child?" I said, "Yes, she's 3 years old." And then he said to me, "Your child could take a bullet." Now, I considered that a threat, and it made me afraid and upset. And I see my family, and I see my friends, and I see the community I'm in, traumatized all the time. We can't seem to stop it. We need something to come and big dog it from the state level. This legislation will help those 50% of the people who are Hispanic getting shot, 37% of the people who are being used deadly force across the country. It seems like they're not using it as proportionally or disproportionately, I should say, as they are in California. This could be really a godsend for us and a very helpful thing to pass. So we really hope that this passes, and we shouldn't stop here. If we get a yes, we're happy with that, but we want more yeses as we come back. Thank you.
Noah.
Thank you.
So I'm a commissioner for the city of Vallejo, and it's a disaster that all around town there's graffiti and posters up of people demanding justice for police violence. Just last month, one of our city council meetings was ironically cleared by police over the amount of anger there was at the activity of police. It's gotten so bad and so violent in our police department that they got kicked off our city insurance. And we are starting to work with the Department of Justice now, but lawyers can't work where there are no laws, which is why we need AB392.
Thank you. And now I'm up. So, AB392, it restricts when police can use deadly force, and it makes it really clear what the criteria is for the use of deadly force. Presently, there's nothing clear about the way that the Vallejo PD relates to the use of deadly force. When you have a relationship with anybody, it's one that has to be engaged in with clear terms, especially with law enforcement. And if there's not, that's going to cloud communications. And when you cloud communications, when there's a gun, when death is on the line, that's an inherently suicidal thing to do for people, for city policy. Okay, that's making people afraid because there is no clear criteria for that. Okay, so we need her leadership in this to step in the vacuum of leadership that's occurring in cities all over California around this issue. We need for people to make clear moral pronouncements about what it means for the police to use deadly force. And we need to be assured that they are practicing de-escalation when it's possible, when we engage in them. And if we can't be assured of that, how are we to feel safe when we engage them? And when they see us feel unsafe, how does that make them feel? Okay? And then finally, we have to hold officers accountable for using deadly force when it's not necessary. Let me tell you about somebody here. Ryan McMahon was an officer who killed Ronell Williams. This is a man, Ronell Williams was a man on a bicycle. He was like moving erratically on the street. And for that crime, Officer Ryan McMahon chased him down a dark alleyway. And when he emerged, Ronell Williams had a bullet hole in the back of his head. Now, the cam footage was released about 5-6 days ago, and it showed pretty clearly that the police officer was standing over Ryan McMahon was standing over the body of Ronald Williams. He tried to get up, shot him in the back of the head when the guy tried to get up. That's the crime he committed. We're still working on what that looks like. But you know what I can tell you? Officer Ryan McMahon unloaded his rounds again shortly thereafterwards. And do you know who he unloaded them into? Willie McCoy.
Is it the same night?
No, it's the same night. Yeah, it was just,
Later.
but this is the second time he's used deadly force in ways which are just like, and there's no consequences for this. Okay.
Do you think it's stripes?
This is not law enforcement. This is dangerous anarchy, and nobody is stepping up to take responsibility for it. And that is the kind of leadership that we need at this moment. And AB392 presents the best possible alternatives that have been time tested or used in other cities in the country, and has always been effective. It has always been able to reduce the amounts of homicides that we're dealing with here. And I now see the floor to someone more attractive and intelligent than me. Actually, no, Rhonda, you.
Actually, we're all here from Vallejo except this young lady here.
Valley.
And my name is Dr. Rhonda Rinko. I'm so happy to be here, happy to have you here. The current law has perpetuated in our city a public health issue. It is a public health issue now. People are traumatized. This law needs to go into effect because we have whole communities that are being impacted. Thousands of people that are being impacted. I'm afraid when I drive my car if I see a police officer drive up behind me. I am petrified. My son came in the other day and said, "Mom, I thought through a scenario for what I'm going to do if a police officer stops me." It's not I'm yay for the police officer because he believes that in police officer, but just because of the color of my skin, just because I'm 6 feet tall, I have to make sure I have a plan for what I'm going to do if a police officer stops me. That's sad. That is sad. So we're here today to ask you, and every legislator or person who has some of influence and power and authority here in this building that we come across, would you support AB 392?
And we catch everybody? So do you think that there's something unique happening in Vallejo?
Yes. Yes. We've been kicked out of our municipal insurance pool because of police liability payouts. The other cities and counties decided we cannot be your partner and be responsible for your massive payments. We've had more police shootings, but it goes way beyond shootings. We have claims through viral videos that guarantee millions of dollars in payouts over the next 2 to 3 years. And the law is not protecting the community. De-escalation must be part of the law. It can't just be a nice training thing. Culture eats training and policy. It just does. And in Vallejo, commands are barked if you don't instantly obey. The flashlights, the billy clubs or the guns come out. Officers have their guns out in most stops. That's crazy because it escalates the danger to everybody.
And in Palmdale, the lawsuit is still pending with against the Palmdale Police, the sheriff's station.
Okay. And when did that happen?
That actually happened last year.
Okay. Right. Yes. I'm actually unfamiliar with that incident, so I need to look that one up.
Yeah, Armando, and he was killed in Palmdale. There was a call for a nuisance for a party, and he went to the back of the apartments and tried to put the dog away, which wasn't his, and that's how he ended up getting killed.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Brian just said to you. So yeah, it not so much that it's different, in Vallejo, because this is a statewide issue. We realize that, but there are signs that what's happening in Vallejo is critical, right? The fact that we have a mayor who now is calling in the DOJ, but not the investigative unit. What is it called? The
PR division.
PR division. Community. So stalling. There's a lot of stuff happening there that needs to be uncovered. We would like the DOJ to come in, the investigative unit to come in and really do a thorough investigation of our police department.
There's no accountability, basically, is what's happening here. There's no accountability. This will set a standard, a higher standard. But where this has been enforced or bills like it have passed, such as Seattle, the death rates among the public have decreased, but also among the police it's decreased. So it keeps everyone much more safe, and there's training that's provided. So it's not just saying, hey, we're going to change the standard, go out there. There's real training that's provided, and it's going to be better with it'll help community relations as well.
Yeah, the current law is tearing away at the very fabric of the relationships between citizens and the police department.
And we understand the counter argument that we will be falsely accused of crimes. We won't provide the same level of protection because we will be inhibited due to these laws. That we respectfully disagree. We know de-escalation works. Training is important. We all support improved training. It's not sufficient to change culture. We need more than mere training, and that the police unions are advocating for more training is nice, but there's already been de-escalation training everywhere in the state, and more would be good, and making it routine would be good. But unless the law changes, what will happen is DAs will never file criminal complaints. They never do. Chiefs don't impose discipline because the policies are exactly the same as the state law, and so they reach the same. But then juries in civil cases award millions of dollars in damages. How is it that they see violations of the law while the chiefs and DAs do not?
And citizens are hushed through intimidation tactics, being followed, police driving by their house, and just in the last week, this young lady talked about a young lady who is connected with the Willie McCoy issue, who was dragged out of her car and tased. And apparently, the video that I saw did not warrant that type of
The
reaction.
Romero family had told me about police coming at night to their house, and it got out in the darkness in an alleyway, and then saying, well, we got a call from this house, and she knows who lives there because she lives there. They were looking to harass her family. And this, I've heard this from other victims' families all around Vallejo. And the problem we have is that the police union, VPOA, has too much political power in the town as well. They maybe have 3 officers who live in the town, but they get to push around our politicians all day long, because they spend money on it.
But I would add to what Dr. Renfro said, this is not a Vallejo issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true.
It's a statewide problem. And when we see this pattern of no one being held accountable and no discussion of how we can do better, and it's just what can we do, that is the law as it stands.
So the bill is going to be, it's being heard this month, so what we're asking is for, Chrissy to go ahead and vote yes and give us the support on AB392. It's needed. She is aware of what's going on in the Antelope Valley, just her backyard. Kern County, the most deadly and dangerous county in the whole country. That's just right on the corner too. So if you can just pass the message and ask her to please support and let her know that the Antelope Valley needs this support, and our assembly member is not in support, we need her to support us.
Where can we look forward to receiving an answer, yes or no, in the affirmative? How will we be contacted to know what her answer is going to be?
We don't usually reach out and tell people. I mean, it's all public information. So when it is voted on, it's all online. Yeah.
Well.
We are here today with Let Us Live and ACLU. Okay. And we are here in regards to the AB392. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hand you this.
Okay. Thank you.
Pretty much what we're doing is we're asking the member to support the bill that is going to be heard this month. And the reason is obviously from the Antelope Valley, and in the Antelope Valley we had several shootings by police officers, and the most recent one was a year ago. A 17-year-old. Police showed up because there was loud music. The 17-year-old boy was not even around in that area. However, he was putting away a dog so they wouldn't attack the officers. The officers then shot the dog, but the bullet ricocheted and it killed the boy in the stomach. Now, the boy was taken into AV hospital. Mother was notified, and the mother was not allowed to see her son until the next day that he had already passed away. Through the whole process, they kept calling him a suspect, but there was a suspect of anything because he was a victim, and they said it was an accident. So, but through the whole thing, whatever they were covering up, they were not allowing the mother to see her dying child. So that's just one of the things. Not only that, but the Antelope Valley, both cities, Lancaster and Palmdale, have been both found guilty by the DOJ for racial profiling. It's well known. I mean, gotten so many millions of dollars. So because of that, we are asking transparency with law enforcement, but also the fact that we want to make sure that law enforcement shouldn't be going to these places with their guns drawn. You know, they have to learn de-escalation, and they do get the training, but the training doesn't do anything unless it gets implemented. So if there's no consequences, they don't have to implement it, because the only thing they have to say is, I fear for my life. And that's exactly what happened over there. You know, they said, oh, it was an accident, we fear for our life. But a 17-year-old boy is dead. And then after that, everything that comes up was, oh, he was truant, he was in continuation school. He was a victim. He was a 17-year-old victim. His name was Armando, not truant or anything like that.
So before we all get started, because we all have a little bit we want to say to you, we're all, everyone else, except my sister here, are constituents. So I wanted to put that on the table first. So I think, go ahead, I'll let Gretchen. Yeah.
And thank you all for making the trip.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
So my experience with Vallejo police is they don't understand de-escalation. They talk about training, but it's not implemented. I was driving home late one night from a downtown fundraiser. Bright lights shining in the back of the car window. I moved over to the right lane to let the guy pass, and he sticks to my tail, following me. I'm like, ooh, this is creepy. I turn the corner to try to see if he's really following me. He's really following me. I start getting really scared. I start speeding. I start blowing stop signs. I'm thinking, I don't want to drive home. This guy's going to follow me into my house. I'm terrified, right? Finally, bloop, 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 it turns out it's a cop, like 6 blocks later. So I was so upset and so wound up. I jumped out of the car. I start yelling at him, why are you chasing me? What did I do? Ah. I think at that point, if I'd been a young black man, instead of ma'am, get back in the car, it would have been a really different story. Probably would have been on the ground, tased, and shot, who knows what. I complained to Sergeant Garrick, who was doing the coffee with the cops things. I'd met him, I wrote him an email. He said, well, we're sorry you were scared, but it's really scary for officers when they pull somebody over. Because I'm like, why didn't they just pull me over? You know, pull me over or leave me alone. What's this? Well, we're scared, you know. And maybe your car fit a description of somebody they were interested in. And just a bunch of excuses. Like, I don't think that's normal police behavior in any other place I've ever lived. But they justified it. So I think this bill will help give them some better ground rules.
Thank you. Terrence?
Okay, cool. I'll stand so she can sing as well. But I'm Terrence. Like they said, we're here for Bill AB392. One of the reasons I think it's really important is just because as we've heard about all the different incidents and things that happen with law enforcement and people of color, there obviously needs to be a change in mindset. And Bill AB392, I don't know why I keep saying the whole thing, but will help. I do feel like is the first step in helping create that change in mindset. I know one of the first barriers that officers say that they face is that in doing so or learning something new or being trained in a different way, it's going to create a hesitation when they get into those confrontations or any type of traffic stop or anything. But I don't believe that. I think it's like anything else. Learning it, practicing it, being taught it, it's like anything else. There won't be a second hesitation, just like pulling a gun out and shooting an unarmed person they don't hesitate in that moment. Recently in Vallejo, a young man was shot at the Vallejo Plaza, Willie McCoy. And in that instance, police officers had 5 minutes while he was unconscious in the car to create a scenario where they could have gotten him out or woken him without any type of confrontation, or without at least a safe scenario for their lives. But the scenario they chose was one that created a situation where there was going to be someone was going to die, and it was obviously going to be him. According to the video, if you watch it, you can even see the officer had his gun pressed to the window. You see his hand shaking because he's afraid. I don't know if he's afraid that the young man's going to pull the gun out, because I'm not in his mind, but he is obviously afraid that something's going to happen. One of them is going to get killed. And then the other officer who's there as well saying, if he moves or and then he says, you know what to do? He says, yeah, I know what to do. So in this situation where a young man was shot, I believe 26 times, immediately after waking up from being unconscious, it's obvious that they didn't have the mental tools or the tool, whatever way they were taught to handle that situation was incorrect. In AB 392, I feel like it will put steps in place that will kind of force it at first. Then after a while, it will become second nature because it's what'll be known.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for meeting with us. My name is Brian Farrell. I'm the retired Santa Rosa City Attorney, and for 24 years I defended police officers in alleged misconduct cases, and I was on post committees that developed training for all California peace officers on suicide by cop and responding to mental health crises while I was City Attorney. In Vallejo, I have discovered our granddaughters moved over to Solano County, so we followed from Santa Rosa that there are too many instances where after an initial command, the police are escalating the use of force to the highest possible level, whether it's with flashlights, tasers, and in some cases guns. And we need to have embedded in the law a requirement that they de-escalate whenever possible. Under the current law, there's more focus on what can they do. Would any other reasonable officer, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 1,000,000, one other reasonable officer have perceived the threat the same way? It's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is what should have been done in that situation? What could have been done? And de-escalation has to be built in the law. The training has been taking place for the last 10 years all over the country. We don't see any decline in police shootings in Vallejo and many other parts of California. We all know DAs don't file criminal charges under the current legal standard. Chiefs don't impose discipline. We never hear about discipline of an officer who has shot and killed someone. In most of these instances, there are things that could have been done differently and better, and our best law enforcement professionals are not focused on that because the law does not require it. We desperately need this in throughout the state, but we do know that they're violating the law even though they're not criminal charges or discipline. How do we know that? In Vallejo, we've had a series of major liability settlements and lawsuits with adverse verdicts, and now there are viral videos that have swept the world, not just the United States, that guaranteed more massive liability payments for Vallejo. But it's not a Vallejo issue. It's de-escalation is built into the culture of law enforcement in England and many other countries. We can do it here.
Hi, I'm Joanna. So, the reason why I think that AB 392 should be passed is because, like they said, it will hold police accountable. So, like Terrence was saying about Willie McCoy, his niece was actually driving the other day down Broadway Street in Vallejo, and officer said she made like the gun hand phrase towards them, and so they decided to pursue them and pull over the vehicle. After pulling over the vehicle, they ripped her out of the driver's seat, threw her on the ground, and tased her. So, after everything was said and done, the officers tried to make it seem as if they pulled her over just because she was driving without a license with minors in the car. But the way I see it is it's a bigger issue than that, because just assuming that a person made a hand signal at you, you may not have known if that person was like deaf and was doing sign language or anything, so you just automatically reverted to, oh, they're trying to target us with like the gun hand phrase. But it was just a really sad thing, just the way they ripped her out of the car and like threw her on the ground. So holding police accountable is the best thing for us, and not only in Vallejo but everywhere.
My turn. Hi, my name is TJ Walkup. I live in the district, and I've met Grayson before. I can tell you, thank you. I've been around there for about 20 years, and I've seen a lot of families who have really experienced their trauma of their life in losing a family member, sister, brother, son, father, all those things, uncles. And after 20 years of watching it, I've seen no real changes. I've seen like a police advisory commission, which is a dog and pony show the chief has as a tool to use for PR. And even the coffee and the cops, all these things that they've used to kind of get the community together haven't really done anything because the activities haven't changed. In fact, they've escalated or gotten worse. In that 20-year period, at one point we wanted a police commission. We asked for it, and they came out like, I don't know, 100 deep or so. There's the police and fire union guys. They were big guys, all kind of scary, and they had a line in front protesting. We're the professionals. We do this kind of thing. That's it. One guy on the line asked if I had a kid. My daughter was 3 years old at the time. And I said, yes, I have a kid. She's 3. And then he said, well, your kid can take a bullet. Any other father would see that as an imminent threat. well, changed my attitude about talking to the cops a lot, right? I see the same thing happening, nothing changes. What we need is not a piecemealed effort anymore, not just police commissions, although we do need those as well, and transparency, where the citizens are involved. But we also need something like this bill, AB392, because what this will do is even the playing field. If the Constitution's our rule of law, right, and we're supposed to be equally protected under the law, I see what's happening now is not the case. You know, if you were to shoot me or if I were to shoot you, I should go to trial or you should go to trial, depending upon who shot who, right? And then it should be an even playing field. It's not that way with police officers. They've kept it quiet the way they've dealt with things. And I think for our community to feel safe, and so people don't objectify each other's lives, whether it's an officer or a citizen, then we have to even the playing field. And this bill is an effort towards that. It can't be piecemealed from county to county or city to city. Something like this will begin that conversation and the change of behavior. And obviously what we need in this world, in this country, is to change our behavior, to honor each other. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
So again, thank you so much for allowing us to speak with you about this bill. Again, my name is Dr. Rhonda Renfro, and I'm a resident of Vallejo, California. And so one of the reasons that I'm supporting this bill is because I see the current law and how detrimental it is to communities, how critical it is for the health inequities that surround this issue to be focused on and addressed. Mainly that this kind of occurrence of police shooting is happening in predominantly African American communities and how that's impacting those communities. But when I talk to anybody in Vallejo, the trauma of living in this city with this type of policing that happens to families over time, how it's impacted everyone. We live in a city where people are traumatized, and they're traumatized because of police brutality. And so this I see as a public health issue, and I really believe that the current law has a lot to do with why our citizen has a lot to do with the negative relationship between Vallejo citizens and the police, and vice versa. It's not a law that facilitates cohesion, social cohesion, and collaboration, and it seems to me that this current law has basically facilitated this kind of militarization of the police force, and that's why I'm here today. So I know that Assemblyman Grayson is not here, and so I know I can't address our ask to you, because our ask is, would he support this bill? Would he support AB 392? We want him to know that as constituents of Assembly District 14, that we're watching, and we're waiting for him to make the right decision and to take what we're saying here to heart. I personally am watching very closely, and I'm making people in Solano County, specifically, and even more so in Vallejo, aware of this bill. AB 931 kind of squeaked through. Not a lot of people knew about it, but between us, how many of us in here, we can make hundreds and thousands of people aware of the decision he makes about this bill. And that's why we're here.
Thank you.
I'd like to close with a couple of things. My name is Susan George. I live in Vallejo. I was also a delegate in AD 14. We did a lot of work, and we helped pass a resolution in the CDP about the need for transparency of records, about the need for people having access to transparency of records. This has now become a law, and we're seeing a lot more information coming out. This isn't in Vallejo, which there's plenty to talk about, but in Oakland, the Oscar Grant case, I don't know if you're aware, but all these records came out that what happened was not what was said, and it's very, very disturbing. There was definitely, when he said that he was using he thought he was grabbing his taser, but he was grabbing his gun. The video clearly shows he looked at it, he knew he was grabbing his taser. So it completely, his gun, excuse me. So it completely flies in the face of what we knew to be true. So if we're going to talk about best practices, they need to be put into effect. You can do all the training in the world, but if the training isn't implemented, it really doesn't mean anything. So this bill holds our law enforcement to a higher standard. And not only that, but it makes them accountable. And where a bill like this has been implemented in Seattle, for instance, not only the lives of the public have been saved, but also law enforcement lives have also been saved. So in that way, it really is a win-win. It's a change, that's right, but it's a change in culture. But if there's any time that's calling for us to do that, it's now. And I think if Assemblymember Grayson would participate in town halls, for instance, on this subject, that would make a tremendous difference. Mm-hmm. And people want to be heard. People really do want to be heard. They feel that the police lobby and the police union has had an outsized influence on the conversation. We're not asking to have an outsized influence. We're asking to be a part of the conversation and to be heard. And we really very much want to put it in your hands. Will Assemblymember Grayson vote yes on AB 392? And we hope so. We really hope so.